discuss?
That was not assigned to me. I don't think that was assigned to me. I think that was assigned to Blossom.
Oh yeah, did I it you might be surprised. We might not have an issue filed on this yet. I have conflated two things. I said handbook, and I shouldn't have. So we'll leave this as a topic. Like I think there's something good for you here. I think there's something.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Cynthia, can you do me a favor? Can you ping? There's a gentleman in our Slack, Vinayak Sharma. Can you? Thank you. Can you ping him and ask if he's joining today's call?
Is he on the Slack?
He is. Yeah.
Okay.
This is his name. All right. Cool. All right. Good. So while Cynthia does that, Josh, let's go back and let's do some discuss. Let's discuss some discuss. And
I'll just share. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So is my screen visible?
Yep.
Yeah. So we are going to have the category and the latest view as per discussed on Slack, I guess, and for the Figma designs.
Yeah. Nice. So this.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this needs to be like styled, and I'll do that. I am sorry because I didn't get time due to my college presentations, but I'll do that. So this is the change, the most recent change I've done. So there are yeah, apart from that, yeah. So what were you saying? I can.
Yeah. No. I would. You actually. I was going to highlight this to Blossom and Cynthia, but you've got the ball. It sounds like on refactoring the way the categories look, and so I take it back. You're probably already tracking some changes, which is changing the font, making sure we're getting the right font in the footer.
Yeah, Blossom had once asked me to assign her some work on Discuss as she wanted, so I did tell her all those things. And so is she on call currently?
Yep.
So I guess Blossom, you can show your changes right now if you are able to display or share your screen.
And Blossom, no, we can't hear you. Blossom, if you're there, you might be having some audio issues, and so we can come back to you.
Oh yeah. So I had assigned her 3 tasks on footer. One of them is to have the hover effects for the icons, the other one to have those links, and the third one to change the fonts for the footer. And like she pinged me that she had done those changes and she was going to send me screenshots. So I guess if by the time she's able to present, then we can look into it later on. Apart from that, so there is a I think yeah, so the ask a question button is also to be kept on the right side of the search bar as per Augustine, or like is that the design approved? Or
Yeah, I can't remember that. What we were trying to like, basically, you come here and it doesn't. It's a little bit disinteresting. I mean, like it's friendly, but it's I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable asking a question because I don't really know. I don't have a good example of what the existing topics and categories are. So I wouldn't click ask a question. I have a sense that like I can search for some things. Like basically, there's nothing valuable above the fold. Like everything that's interesting is below the fold. And granted, like if you landed right there, like right there, that's exactly where the HashiCorp one starts. Yeah, you're like in the thick of it. It could be a little bit discombobulating to just see all that info. But if it gets styled such that it's a lot more clean, like this, is like, oh, it's actually pretty clear. Like, there's announcements, and then there's a breakdown of one section, one category per project. That's like it gets me into what's going on and understanding who's asking what and like where to go ask something and what possible topics there are to ask on, while not inundating me with all the stuff that we see. So like this is what we should do. This. And if we want to style it slightly differently, okay, great. But otherwise, like there would be a hard argument to place that we should be presenting any different experience. Like I don't, we can, we can argue that there can be a hero, but the hero is duplicative. Right now, what we have is duplicative of you already have a search. And does it need to be, do we need to have two? And do we need that other one in your face? Maybe. If we slim it way down, maybe do we need the ask a question? Is that what people are going to be mostly doing, is initiating new questions? And when they do from there, like, I don't know that that's true either. We probably want them to, first browse or search for their existing issue. Like what I'm saying is it's not a well thought through design. Even though Mr. Ogisa does some very pretty things, it is nice and friendly. It is like, it's not a, I'm not this is it's a good design. When we reflect on it more deeply and we start to get into, the purpose and use of what people are going to be doing here, well,
I think you should be able to hear me now. Hello?
yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, great. I have to change my earphones. All right, so I'll start sharing my screen now.
Okay.
yeah.
So I was trying to achieve, this is the main website for Layer5. This is what I'm trying to achieve. For it was impossible to change this. I changed the width and everything, but I was seeing that it wasn't expanding, it wasn't taking the full width like this one did. So I didn't go around to discussing it with Josh that I would need access to probably expand this whole, because this footer is taking the same width as the header, just like this footer is taking the same width as the header, and it does feel like the width that has been assigned to this whole discourse is smaller than what has been assigned to this one. So this needs to be changed. I feel like this width is probably 70% and this is 90, but it is not peculiar to the footer, it's peculiar to the whole page. It is just confined to this width. And if we want this footer to take up the full space like this, it would have to start from where this is being controlled. Yeah, I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a great assessment. Or like, I think you're totally right.
All right.
One quick comment before we. Okay, well, there's a couple of things. One is never say never with like these darn machines. it's most often the case that it's possible, but it would be so darn arduous or so hard, it's not worth it. In this case, I think it's possible and achievable. One thing, so that's one thing to note is font. The font family is probably an item that you're tracking, but it's not, it might not be obvious to most, but it is like stabbing me in the eyes when I see it on, and that's just that, yeah, Austin, whom I was just paying compliment to about his natural visual talents, is that he had chosen, yeah, well, that's a cool plugin. What is that? Or a cool site. What did you go to? What is font? Is that the?
Yeah, what's font? I can just check
What's
what's
fun?
font. Yeah.
Sweet, I could have used
Then
that.
it's a Chrome extension.
Yeah, it's a Chrome extension.
Yeah, nice job.
Nice. Yeah, I knew that. I use that all the time. No, that's cool. That's okay. That's a challenge. I think that one's surmountable. And you've got some folks on the phone who've like dealt with this particular challenge on layer5.io in the past. So anyway, so you're in good hands. But the other challenge of what I think, unless I'm mistaken, the problem statement is exactly as you described it, which is discourse, or the theme that we're using, or like the server, the system that we're using, it has predefined the width for the entire app, and the question is, well, how do we how do we override that, and B, assuming that we're successful overriding that, is that gonna mess up the rest of how the site, like we might be able to override it, and the nav bar and the footer, oh, they look great, you can't tell any difference, but it could be that the rest in the middle, I don't think that it would get messed up, but it's possible.
I don't think it really get messed up. It's just take more width on the screen. But I don't think if we find where we can edit it, if it does mess it up, we can just revert it back to the width it previously was. But I think the most important thing now is knowing where to get the width that affects the layout. Because this is tagged to this side. And even if I remove all the CSS, because the CSS that contains this is this, I'm going to put it back, but then it still doesn't move. This it just comes down because I've removed the margin, or it doesn't move to the right, this particular icon, like I expect it to. So I didn't do it, and it should be moved to the full right, just like this.
So I'll be quiet for a moment as Josh or others give some helpful hints about how to.
So there's a, I think the attribute is flex right. So like you encode the division into a flex, and then you apply it as flex right. Like the same one is used for layer5.io, I guess.
Yeah, so these footer icons, which is yeah, here, they're already been moved to the right. Here, part anyway from the right. If I just remove this,
Okay, I think we'll talk about it on Slack, if I guess.
yeah,
Like,
yes, we do
that's
need
not,
to.
yeah. So if anyone else has suggestions, then, or else I'll tell you what we can have on it.
I mean, that padding of 15 right, that actually literally says
Spacing between the icons.
okay, gotcha. Right, which would literally slide things, it would actually slide things to the left a little bit, because it's putting extra space on the right hand side of the icons, and then that.
Yeah, this extra space.
Okay, cool. Cool. So then on the second, so Josh will sync with you on that one, but on the second item, the larger one of expanding the width of the, like basically the whole container, the whole. Has anyone else looked into that?
The thing is, like, if we overwrite the expansion, then it would mess up for smaller screens. Like for me currently, like for my laptop, it would mess up, but for my screen, it would work perfectly for my like desktop screen. So
Oh, it's not
so
going to be
the thing is, for
responsive.
footer we can decide it manually and we can overwrite it, but for header it is not possible. Or like then we'll have to overwrite and bring it out of that container and all. So that's the thing. Like I remember I've explicitly mentioned it to be something around 1100 pixels for the container size.
Yeah, it was here, but
And you did that, Josh, based on your laptop screen width? Is that how you determined?
No, I did it on the basis of Layer5.io.
Okay.
No, the master is supposed to be, you supposed to make it 1100, not 110. Yeah.
Am I audible? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So one thing is, why are we writing the code for the photos separately, like for desktop and the mobile? Like the HTML can be common for both of them, right?
So the thing was, like, Yash Vardhan was writing it down, and I talked to him, but like I don't think he took that into suggestion. And then we moved like the focus for the mobile portion to someone else. But yeah, like for current website, we do have the same, like only the CSS changes are made, so we can
Yeah,
do that.
because in Discuss framework console also they provide a common option as well. Only
Yeah,
the
they
CSS
provide
part
this
can be
HTML.
different. Yeah. So the CSS part can only be differentiated, but the HTML could be same. I guess.
Yeah. So the thing
Also,
is,
the
like,
head.
he yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So what I think is also the header could be right aligned is what I feel instead of left aligned. Because I have seen it, they only provide left and right. There is nothing as center. So I think the right aligned would be better compared to left. Not sure.
You mean the links?
Yeah, the header landscape projects learn community blog.
Yeah. Okay. So like I think we talked about it and you were absent. So
Okay. Okay. And
no
other
problem.
part is the headers don't change to the mobile view on smaller screens. Like, do they need a separate plugin or has it been done using CSS itself?
So again, are you talking about the links?
Yeah, like the headers, the 5 links that we have in the header, landscape projects, learn and learn community and blog, it should be changing to a hamburger dropdown in mobile, right? But currently, I don't think it does so. Instead, the screen expands or splits to the right in mobile.
Yeah, that's an issue with the uh but the thing is, like have you tried it on the like Chrome itself, or like have you looked onto the Discuss app, because they mostly prefer to use it. So there's an Discourse application on like Play Store or App Store, and so I think.
Okay. No, I have checked it on Chrome itself. I haven't checked it on any separate app. So on Chrome, I could find that.
Okay, then I'll look into if we can change them into Chrome itself as well.
I'm not sure if that requires a separate plugin or that has to be done manually because I remember looking up to it, but I couldn't find any option to change the header apart from adding the link.
Yeah. Okay.
Quick recap on those. There are a couple of items in there. One is that the right aligned navbar matches with the layer 5 IO navbar. Is that what we're shooting for?
Yes, I guess, because that looks almost similar, though it can't be totally right aligned because of the two options that we have to discuss, that is user login and that option. But at most, whatever extent it should be right aligned.
Good. So Blossom didn't know the poop that she was stepping in with. Just this is great. Has anyone necessarily given helpful feedback to her with respect to that overall container? So Josh was saying, hey, if it gets expanded, that might cause an issue with respect to smaller width screens, although that seems like an issue that, like, if it's statically defined that it's that wide, yeah, right, that's not responsive. We can't have it be statically defined, but to allow it to expand up to the same width as what Layer 5 IO has is probably the right answer. Yes, things should get crunched down as the browser, as the width minimizes. I think.
Yeah, like I'm not sure what's the code, the CSS code which we have in the layer5.io side, same can be used in Discuss photo as well, is what I see. Like we can use the flex structure there also, and we can copy the media queries or see how the media queries work in that and what CSS updates have been done to change the photo as well for different resolutions. Because setting the photo to a particular width throughout all the resolutions won't be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Nikhil is right. You could use media queries for it. And also by defining the width with percentages, it would automatically fit with the width of any device. If it's a smaller screen, it take up 90%. Percentages are more fluid when defining width. Can you hear me?
Kind of.
Your background is quite noisy.
You have a very friendly neighbor who's also loud in the mouth.
Yeah, they get very passionate. Please excuse me.
No, I totally, no problem. So I guess the question, I think we're aligned with respect to sort of the ideal behavior of the site, the width and kind of how things dynamically respond, the use of media queries, I'll re-articulate part of what Nikhil was saying, which is like the goal, the reason that we're like spending any amount of this time really styling discourse is to almost trick the user that they're on the same site, or like it's not to trick them, it's just to give them a common experience across them as much as we can. And so, yeah, literally reusing the Flex CSS and the media queries from the site to the like that. That's a great starting point to start from. And if we have to deviate some, because okay, but so and then Blossom is aligned with this, and she's thinking toward that. I think the question for me is, Blossom, do you feel like you've identified the right control points for adjusting the overall width and the like I think in our discussion you've been granted the freedom to go ahead and like manipulate the entire experience of the whole site, which is something that you were probably trying to avoid before. You were trying to get like the nav bar and the footer all aligned and looking good without messing with the inside, so to speak. Understanding now that like that's okay, go ahead and manipulate the entire site. Do you feel like you've got enough? Do you have what you need to take a couple more steps and to try that out? Or are you missing like the precise control point that you need to identify yet?
Well, I don't think I have control. Josh gave me some admin rights. Well, I still need to look further, like look at the sites, because the areas where I have to actually change the width, I've not yet gotten to that point. So that's still something I need to look into. Right now, I can edit the footer, the body, but the width that affects the whole site is still something that I'm sure I would find. Yeah, but something I'm still looking into. And yeah, I should be able to work on it.
Perfect.
There are a
Yeah,
lot of settings here, and one of them should probably affect the width of the whole site.
Perfect. That makes sense. As Josh follows up with you on the social icons, that's a perfect time for you guys to also explore where that right control. I was saying control point. I guess that what I meant like, hey, yeah, where's the right selectors or the right CSS classes to. So Josh,
all
we're
right.
gonna. So Blossom, this is great. Josh, we just concluded that you and Blossom are going to talk more or less, but that a little bit of the discussion was somewhat helpful to Blossom. It isn't exactly what she was needing, but Josh, you guys will follow up.
So I think we had a meeting on it. I'll talk to her and like we can discuss on it further as well. Yeah, so apart from that UI part, so like we're going to talk about configuration or
Yes, we were. And the reason I say were is that, well, we're like we could spend 5 minutes, let's put it at the bottom of the agenda and come back,
no
because it's
problem.
one of those things where
Get it.
because I think we could spend an hour on it and it would be so. All right, so very good. So we're back here. Navendu and Nikhil. So Integromat. Does one of the two of you guys want to share the screen and sort of give context to this?
Oh, wait, let me just take it.
You know what? Forget it. I'll do it. Sorry. Let me, okay, let me take 30 seconds to introduce everyone to the problem, and then let's see if we can identify how we're going to cover one of our missing user flows. So everyone that's here in the community has experienced part of this community's onboarding process. And that is to, I'm going to share what that is really briefly. Hopefully you've had a decent experience with it. All right. So there's a few different, all right, this is going to be maybe a little bit of an eye chart or eye strain on your eyes or whatever, a strain on your eyes. People come into the community from different places. A lot of times, we consider that Slack is sort of the heart of where we exchange. It's sort of the medium by which a lot of our exchange happens, for better or worse. But that people go on a journey. Some people are here long enough, and we sometimes people engage with a meshmate. Sometimes they're here long enough, and we ask them to join we invite them to join the org. We give them a profile on the site, or we do various things with them. We send them shirts or stickers. We do, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. But one of the things that goes on for most people that join is that if they're going to contribute, we're going to get them access to like the community calendar, to the community drive, maybe get them signed up on the newsletter, there's a lot of things. But one of the things that we do is we'll send them this member form, which for the most part, which has entirely been a Google Doc. Each of you have received a Google Doc in the past that has said, where we said, please fill this in so we can get to know you better and get you plugged in the right way, understand what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. And I think that the Google Doc has been, has had hopefully a little bit of a personal touch to it, because we get to have some commentary and some exchange to the doc. And please, anyone correct me if this doesn't, because I do want to know if this doesn't feel like this, that, so we've used, there's like 1,400 people here. And if we have 1,400 Google documents, one for each person, it's not the best way to like easily have a Rolodex and access to who's working on what and what were their email address. We can get a hold of them and talk to them, and like it's, that's not the ideal data store for your, for that. Something like a spreadsheet is a bit more helpful, because then we can look across things and say, oh, wait, we left behind, Cynthia, who never received a copy of this book or whatever. She never got to the next step. And, did we miss that? Did she not follow up or what? And so as the community has grown, trying to, have a high touch, warm and welcoming, personal engagement of each individual is like, I got to tell you, like, I've gotten older in the last year and so I've got more white, I've got more wisdom, more distinguishment down here from just trying to keep up. And I can enunciate names of any country at this point. Like anyway, it's untenable. We need some amount of automation, but we want to, and I've long withstood doing that, because automation doesn't feel good. Like if we, and at this point though, like we had a community manager on staff. We don't anymore. We're falling behind. People aren't having the best experience that they can have when they come here. We've poured so much into the community, and that's why we have mesh mates, and that way, like, it's really important. And it's painful to see us fall down on aspects of that, not get it excellent. So we're going to have to automate. So we're doing some amount of automation. How many of you received, I'm curious, how many of you received a Slack notification that gave you a list of resources, like a list of things to do? And it would have come from like an anonymous bot, like either called community manager or called AutoCode or something. It would have been a list of like, here's a checklist of things to do now that you're here, and different resources to access. If anyone received it, please just maybe make a comment in the chat. So with that background, we're automating. And one of the things that we're doing is, and so Cynthia, this relates to what you and I were what we're going to talk about with Vinayak, who had suggested this, that instead of having people fill in a Google Doc, we're going to go ahead and have them fill in a form, which is less personal. And this is something that I push back against, but at this point, like, we need to do it. So it's a form that says, welcome, and let's answer the same questions that you would have answered in Google Doc. You'll just answer them in this form. It's like, hey, we want to know about you. We want to understand why you're here and what you do and how to connect with you. And so fill in the exact same questions that you had before. And by the time you're done and you click submit, some amount of this process is automated. Like some of these steps gets automated, and it's this automation, this onboarding of a new community member, that occurs in here. We've used different tools, and we still use different tools to automate part of this process. I won't walk through each of the steps and kind of the workflow, but it gets people signed up in various ways.
Just a question, like, does filling this form make those entries into that community member Google Sheet?
Yeah, it does. Here.
So like we don't have the personalized member document, but like we have those sheet as the only thing, right?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
yeah.
to Josh's point, instead of having 1,400 individual Google Docs, which, by the way, when you search Google Drive, it's not a terrible Rolodex. You can just search for the person's name and find the doc. It's pretty fast. But when you want to make sure that everybody received a T-shirt or something, like you can't answer that question. You have to look at every single doc. And it's like, so instead, when someone fills in the form, that form will the form itself auto populates the community members spreadsheet. And I would share the spreadsheet now, except it has personal info in there, people's names and email addresses, and that's okay. And so that becomes more manageable. So when you fill in the form that we were just looking at, a spreadsheet gets populated. Also, what happens is, so Josh, to pick it up, so there's kind of two things I want to try to cover in this same conversation. So one is that Cynthia, this form, it's all right. It has some explanation. It's still, a little bit impersonal. What Vinayak has suggested that we potentially do, instead of having this literally a Google form, that instead what we do is have a form that people fill in on the site itself. So somewhere here under newcomers, it would be like, oh, great, welcome. And if you're here and you want to be here more, complete a newcomers, a new community member form, and click to complete the form. And that the form would be web-based here. Now, yeah, hey, we can iframe that other Google form, sure, but it's going to look iframed, and it's going to be, people are going to know it's a Google form. And it's just not as high quality, not as high class, not as, and so he's highlighted the fact that, like, we already have a mechanism for forms and capturing information that people are putting in, and entering that information into a Google sheet in the same way that the Google form is doing it. And the example is, well, it's here on this page. People take this survey and they fill it, and they take the survey answering these questions. So it would be, it's not, it's not people's names and their links to their Twitter and stuff, but it's questions and input all the same. And there's automation behind this that fills in a Google sheet. And that automation is actually here. This is the workflow behind the scenes. This is like the server side code that when someone clicks submit on the form, that data is posted here and it gets written to a Google sheet, and then people get an email saying, thank you for submitting the form. And so in the same way, when we can move that Google form over to a web we can get rid of the Google form, go to a nice web-based interface where we can provide a custom experience and process here. So Cynthia, I was saying Cynthia just because she was the first one on the call that was focused in this area, but Vinayak, rather, if anyone is interested in that particular effort about converting the Google form to a web-based form, then please see Vinayak Sharma, who's on the call now.
Okay.
And Vinayak bites, by the way, so watch out. So no.
Okay.
No, no, I'm sorry. Vinayak does not bite his. But he would be quite helpful in showing you all a prior example of how that's done, and being there to help as you were to work toward that. So if this isn't Cynthia, if somebody we didn't even create an issue on this yet, but this is a good time to talk about it. And so I'll leave that where it is. Someone might follow up with Vinayak, great. If so, I'll see a GitHub issue opened by someone. Getting back to the other part of what we needed to discuss is that, okay, well, there's this new flow that when someone fills in the form, whether it's from a Google form or a web-based form, either way, that data would be, that their answers would be pushed in here, and they get onboarded, that they get access to the calendar and to the drive, and they get a message and stuff, and great. And that's one vector from which a new member enters into the community. They might enter in by filling in the community member form. Good. And then we can get them access to things. But that's not the that's not the only way, and that leaves other ways unautomated. And most notably, the other way is people will just drop into Slack. They'll just, they'll discover the community in whatever way that they do. And everywhere that we're talking about the community, we say, join the community, and we point them to Slack. Join here, join here, join here. So people drop in, and when they drop in, well, there's no, currently there's no automation that's taking them through the rest of the flow. So I said I would take 30 seconds to explain it, and I took 15 minutes. Navendu and Nikhil have been the two individuals have been more focused on that automation. And they've been working on the constraints of this particular platform around the fact that it is limited. And so Nikhil and Navendu and ultimately Vinayak as well, it is the case that we can, on a relatively slow interval, poll Slack for new joiners, and an interval that's comfortable with keeping within the free tier of this. But it's also the case that, and by the way, we don't want to automatically process. Anyone who joins Slack should not automatically go through this whole flow. Not necessarily automatically. It's more like they might be here as a contributor. They might be here as a user. They might not want this access. And so some amount of a quick exchange or an understanding of who they are and why they're here can be helpful before the full flow goes through. That doesn't mean that they can't be sent a message that says, welcome here, and here's a bunch of resources. And by the way, if you really want to, the rest of your entry to getting access to all the rest of the community resources is really gated by you filling in a new member form. I think that's kind of appropriate. That's that they would fill it in, and from there, the rest would flow. So the trigger for that, sure, it can, we can poll every so often to see if someone new is here, send them salutations, and send them a list of resources, like the full block message that has all the resources. And one of the most notable mentions in that message would be, here's the link to the newcomers forum, fill this in. That doesn't cover everything. There's these other scenarios in which a number of you that are on the call wear either a meshmate hat. There's 3 of you on the call, or some of you wear a community manager hat. There's 25 people here that have access to, that are community managers that wear that hat. And any one of you at any time might want to ad hoc onboard someone, ad hoc send them the message that says, we're pleased that you're here. I understand you're looking for additional resources. Be sure to fill in the newcomers, the new community member form, so that you can be granted that access. Well, it would be nice, that's a whole 2 or 3 sentences that everyone would like to spare their fingertips from having to type out every time, 1,400 times. And so a quick an alternative way of invoking this type of a flow ad hoc in an event driven way not in a way in which Slack, this integromat is sitting there polling Slack. An event-driven way would be, you could take that person's username in Slack. Like this is one of many different ways, but one of the ways is that there can be a dedicated private channel for automating the onboarding of any given newcomer, that you would go to that Slack channel, drop in the user's Slack ID, like at Cynthia. You'd mention their name in the channel, and that message would be sent to Integromat, and it would search for, it would be expecting and look for an ID, a user's name. From there, it would look them up and process them. One of the limitations of this particular platform is that if you take a user's ID and you want to look up their email address, Slack/Integromat make that hard to do. And when we need the email address to be able to grant them access to things. The way that so that flow wouldn't be about dropping their name into the channel and having them go through this whole thing. That flow would be more like drop their name into the channel so that a message can be sent to them saying, here, this is what you need to do. Some of this needs to be written down and looked over, because what I'm getting at is that we probably need a couple of tools, like a custom Slack command is one of those nice to have things. I don't know how many of you all use Slack commands, but to invoke any Slack command, you just put a / and you'll be presented with a list of internal keywords, commands that you can invoke in Slack. And you can make custom ones, and a custom one could be an onboarding one. And so for both, so Vinayak and Anita have had some comments here. So one of the things that Vinayak has said is that we could send a general message to all newcomers, containing the web-based form. With the web-based form, we can identify different paths for people. That's a great paths for where to take the automation based on how that individual is identifying themselves. They're identifying themselves as someone here to contribute, someone here to focus on using the stuff, or both, or just here as a standard by, like somebody that's just someone who's just passively engaged. But that's a, yeah. Yes, that's a great, we should do that. Okay. And then Anita, says that, we can automate, I mean, and Vinayak, that takes care of part of, it's a great answer that blanketly covers the other entry point. When people just drop into Slack, oh, what happened? Like, how are we going to take care of them? Outside of everyone on this call, by the way, if you ever see anyone new join, you should say hi to them and welcome them, make them feel, introduce them to people. But getting them access to things, it's nice when that's automated, because that's a bunch of administrative work that doesn't necessarily need to be personal. It just needs to be taken care of. So to what Vinayak had said, that'll work. We might still want to look at an ad hoc mechanism for the person who says, well, I never got that message, which it could happen that the system didn't send it, or they just missed it and it's gone now, or they joined, they left, and then they came back a month later and the message is gone. So the ability to ad hoc invoke that would be good, and it might just be, anyway. So Anita had said, we can automate this Slack.
Yeah, you know how when you open a new Slack channel, you get a Slack bot message. Yes, so we could automate it in a way that any newcomer that comes gets a welcome to the community message alongside the link to register as a member.
That's That's perfect. I guess the question there becomes, so that's ultimately what has been that we've been trying to achieve with this tool and with the tool prior. It was called autocode. This tool is called Integromat. Both of them fell down on that use case. Like they both have limitations that prevent us from doing it. There is the native, like to I think what you're saying is like, hey, Slack itself didn't use to, they now have, there's some amount of this that you can configure that initial experience, like what the Slack bot initially sends to you. Now there's two things. One, I don't know if that's a paid for thing, like an enterprise account thing, like the ability to configure it. And I just don't know, I'm just ignorant. And Anita, that's something that you could investigate. That would be, if we can configure it, we should. The second thing about it is this doesn't mean that your suggestion isn't a good one. It is. But the second thing about it is, if all of the Slacks that people join are doing that, there's some certain percentage of people who are just going to ignore it and just assume it's the default, like, introduce yourself message, and some percentage, but other percentages of people will, like, I have seen communities where it is customized and where I've read it. So
All right. Okay. On that note, I get what. I always read the Slack bot message, so I just assume that some people will check it out.
Yeah, like, yeah, isn't everyone else a good citizen of Slack? Doesn't everyone else read the? So, Anita, if you don't, you don't have to. If you don't mind, if you can help identify where for us to go configure that, we can let's do that. And that's an obvious, like, of course we should be doing that, like, and we're not. So yeah.
Okay. I'll put more effort into that then.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right.
So we are.
Yeah.
Navindi,
One question. Yeah. Regarding that scenario. So one thing is, when the user fills up the form, there is an API, there is a Slack check on the user. If the user is there in the Slack or not, and the Slack bot will send that. So one thing is, will that scenario will ever be triggered? Because if the user is filling up the form, he won't be joining Slack instantly. So that would fail, I guess, always.
yeah, right. Which is what this is about here. You're right that depending upon where the user is in their journey and, like, what they've done thus far, it may be that yeah, I'll try not to repeat exactly what you'd said, but that they fill in the form, there'll be an entry for them in the sheet, and they'll be granted access to the drive and to the calendar, which, by the way, they may already have that access and fill in the form, at which point this would bulk, error out and say, that the user already exists, which is what this is about, saying, well, just ignore that then, fine. It might also be the case that they filled this in, they don't have a Slack account. So we come over here and we're like, okay, let's look for this message is to the community managers. This message sends to the community managers channel, telling the community managers, so-and-so just filled in their form. Great. So you can go take a look at it and engage with them and welcome them and get them, all set up. And this flow, this is to the specific user themselves, and it looks them up by email address, assuming that the same email address that they're using to fill in the member form is the same that they signed up with Slack on. And then, yeah, if they're not in Slack, this will error out. Now, which means that they wouldn't be sent, like, this message. This is a long message that says, welcome to the Layer5 community. And here's where you can get the welcome guide. And here's where you can read an ebook. Here's where you can take workshops. And here, it's a very helpful. Here's the community calendar, all that stuff. So to Nikhil's point, like, there's partial processing that may be happening depending upon what stage that person is in. And right now, the community managers wouldn't know. There's just an assumption that if they're seeing the messages saying so-and-so is filled in their form, there isn't actual confirmation, like the community managers don't know whether or not they got access to so I had considered that like, hey, this maybe should be, out here, and the problem was this might error here, and like I didn't, get through the rest of but Nikhil.
Yeah, so what I was like a workaround which I was thinking is we can have both the scenarios, like the current one which we have when the user joins. But the issue with that is the event-based polling because of the issue with the integromat. But yeah, because if we have that scenario running as well uh, with this one, then we will be able to send a message to the user when he or she joins us.
Yeah.
And I think in this scenario as well, we can like switch the router with the search for user scenario, like what is that called? App, yeah. And then I think we'll be able to do it. I will take a look into it and I will update it, see what.
Perfect.
But
Thank you.
if we are running two scenarios, in that case we might run out of operations.
Right. Yep. And so couple of answers to it. So one is that we can't, like, there can be a logical separation between two accounts, that one that deals with onboarding scenarios and the other one that deals with other I don't know what to call the category, but other scenarios. But even at that, like, well, geez, it probably wouldn't take long to blow that out into like 3 accounts and then maybe 4. And it's like, well, look, let's just purchase let's subscribe to the service. And maybe that's what we should do right now, because it's cheap enough. And I think that yeah. So Nikhil, maybe we should just go with that. Let's like, as and when you hit your limit and it's obvious that like this isn't going to be achievable, with just let's ping me and I'll probably go get us signed up, and then that way you all can work with an account that can get done what you need to do.
Yeah, sure.
But
one thing is, like, for the timing, even if we have 2 accounts, considering the user flow, we can have that. But that depends, because we are getting 10,000 operations in the initial subscription that we get. So if we reduce the time at which the operations happen, then there might be a possibility that we may burn out even that way.
Yeah, I mean, if it isn't obvious to everyone on the call, I've gone on record about this. I don't know how many times, like, I'm a cheap bastard. And my wife, unfortunately, knows that. And she's been working for about a decade to correct this. And she's, anyway, she's helping me not be such a penny pinching bastard, right? And it's a Grinch or whatever. So yeah, Nikhil, I mean, like, that's right. That, like, there could be a free 1 or 2 free accounts out there that are set to, on off intervals, just pull the thing and do the thing that it's supposed to do. And that takes care of, one of the core flows around people joining Slack and making sure that they're getting access to resources. And should it ever be the case, which is, not likely, but should it ever be the case that we accidentally doubled up on somebody and somebody received 2 of those messages, like it's so much worse if they don't receive any message than if they receive 2. It's like, and what I'm saying is that free account, we could just forget about and just let it run and do its, like, and a couple of them, because they would just cover us, like, between once we have the automation right.
I was just thinking about that corner case, and I'm not sure, but I think they provide an option to automate that feature, like when to run that scenario. I'm not sure if they allow it bi-weekly or at 15 days interval or so.
They do.
If that's so, then that would be the best option. I will check that and I will confirm it by tonight, like for me tonight, for you today. Yeah,
Nice.
I'll do it by today.
Yep, my mind works in various time zones. I was following along.
Yeah, I'll do it by today and confirm what could be the best approach we could take.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, beautiful. It really does take a single individual to make sure that we're covering all the bases. So, Anita, great suggestion. Vinayak, beautiful. So we should do what you had said. We should also, if we can, if Elizabeth or Cynthia or Blossom or anyone else is willing to take on the the recreation of that Google form into a web-based form, it's a nice to have. It's not critical, but it would be in following with the, I think, high touch, classy experience that we offer newcomers. At least I hope that's how people would describe it. And Elizabeth has got her hand up. Beautiful. We're a few minutes after. We didn't make it through all the agenda. Does anyone have anything critical else we end for today? Oh, it's just only Josh's stuff we didn't cover. So that's no problem. Like, that's not important. So we can.
Yeah, so like I just added the last topic a few minutes before ago. So that was just about the She Code Africa. So the program. So like, yeah, so it's not necessary to discuss it on call if not required. So you can just have a look, or anyone can just have a look. And
nice. Yeah. Ooh, that's nice.
So I just wanted to ask that, like, can once you or either Ruth or someone can just see if any other content needs to be added?
There's one other, we're missing there's some call to action. There's something. And given that this has already started, it might not be join now and participate now. Like, that might not be the thing, but it might be join the community. Like, I think this participate takes you to join Slack. Oh, hey, we have more than, that's awesome. But yeah, that's my only feedback is what's the call to action? It might be ask Ruth about, it might be like talk to a community manager about the program or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
That's a wrap. All right. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.